want to say something about comedy criticism. My complaint about comedy criticism is that it doesn't exist. And that seriously bothers me. Because I really feel like the lack of it adds to our cultural illiteracy. It's hard to be a critic of comedy. It's hard to take something that's not supposed to be taken seriously. But unfortunately, that leaves a lot of bloggers and rock critics and film critics and stuff like that to take it seriously. You'll notice that the people who do criticize comedians usually take comics more seriously than comics take themselves. And that has and now we have cancel culture and whatnot. But there is no, like, serious analysis of what comedians do. It doesn't exist. I think The Onion did it briefly back in the day, but they stopped. Once they became woke, they stopped being funny themselves, so.
I want to talk about a guy named Rob Sheffield.
Who will be thoroughly bashed. Rob Sheffield wrote a thing called SNL 140. He ranked the 143 members of the SNL cast. Rob Sheffield's math is not that good, but he ranked Norm Macdonald at 139 out of 143, and this is what he wrote about Norm Macdonald. Macdonald clearly thought he was hilarious, and that counts for something. Confidence is essential for a Weekend Update anchor. Unfortunately, he was just a Dennis Miller clone with no mullet and no jokes. Stare into the camera a little longer, Norm. Maybe it'll get funnier. You know, so I want to break that down real quick. First off, your criticism, one of his criticisms is that Norm Macdonald didn't have a mullet. Let that sink in. A Dennis Miller clone. I don't think that there is a comic that's more singular than Norm Macdonald. One time I wrote like 10 things I learned from Norm Macdonald, but then I posted it online and it lasted about an hour before I realized, people were going to see my shit. When I get on stage, people are going to figure me out. Because there are a lot of lessons to learn from that. When you do comedy, you essentially have a bag full of magic tricks. They're all sleight of hand tricks, and there's names for some of them. Some don't have names yet. You've got like non sequiturs. You have what do you call it? Shaggy dogs. You have a thing that Dana Gould likes to do that I call the build and slap, where you tell a very long story and then you have a shocking punchline. Norm Macdonald essentially created a joke. I think Everybody Loves Raymond called it the Norm Macdonald lean-in. But what it is it's essentially you set up a joke, and then for the punchline, you just simply tell the truth as bluntly as possible. So it's kind of a lot like that build and slap, but it's a lot shorter. And it's also sort of like observational comedy, but it's almost as if you just, instead of being clever about the observation, you just say it. So an example would be that he used on Weekend Update was Lisa Marie Presley and Michael Jackson are getting divorced. Insiders say that they were two completely different people. Lisa Marie was more of a stay-at-home kind of gal, and Michael Jackson was more of a homosexual pedophile. See right there? Inventing a joke is virtually impossible. Not writing a joke, but inventing a type of joke. It's literally what Martin Scorsese would say, expanding the form. It's very difficult. And he pretty much invented that during Weekend Update on SNL. His tenure at SNL, by the way, there was nothing else going on that show. And it was widely said by people like David Letterman and Howard Stern that was the only part of the show back then that they watched. It's similar to what Eddie Murphy did in the early 80s. Eddie Murphy pretty much saved that show. He was single-handedly responsible for keeping that show on the air for a number of years, for like between 2 to 5 years. I can't remember. Probably more like 4 years is my guess. Norm Macdonald was the same way. Norm Macdonald was very anti-corporate, but and ended up getting fired, and then having when he left the show, having his movie commercials, ads for his movie banned from NBC. So let's shelve that and Rob Sheffield's motivations. Maybe that's what was motivating Rob Sheffield, is what I'm saying. I guess Rob Sheffield is a corporate guy. Let's see. The another thing I wanted to break down here was so calling him a Dennis Miller clone is absurd. There is no similarity between him and Dennis Miller. And Dennis Miller, by the way, calls him a genius. The thing that struck me about this was stare into the camera a little longer, Norm. Maybe it'll get funnier. And so, trying to break down the motives of Rob Sheffield doing this makes me think of a backstory here. A woman named Vanessa. I can't. Why did I even look this up? I can't pronounce that name. Vanessa Gregordors had written an article about Artie Lang, and Norm Macdonald got on the Stern Show and started shitting on the writer for doing a hatchet job, and he was right. It was a hatchet job. When he said the article about Artie Lang, it seemed to romanticize Artie's heroin addiction, like he was some Charlie Parker type or some shit like that. And it really kind of bothered me. Now that he has no nose, you should do a profile of him, Rolling Stone, and see how romantic his addiction actually is. So it could be possible that Rob Sheffield is white knighting this broad. It could be that he's just a corporatist. But let's sum this up. Norm gave us Larry King, the best David Letterman impression, best Larry King impression ever, best Bob Dole impression ever, best Larry King, best Letterman impression ever. He gave us Celebrity Jeopardy, which became a SNL staple for years. He gave us Burt Reynolds, which was such a fucking awesome fucking gag that a Jeopardy contestant actually wrote Turd Ferguson as one of her answers during Final Jeopardy. How's that for an effect on culture? Unlike Dennis Miller, Norm Macdonald's fans can quote his jokes like nothing. You say he has no jokes. Here's a joke. Here's a Norm Macdonald joke I like. I'm into S&M. My safe word is boring. Here's another one. We got to set the clocks back an hour because of daylight savings time. Give it 6 months. I think the problem is, Rob, you don't have a sense of humor. How could you, though? I don't know if you guys have ever seen this fella, but he kind of looks like he looks like a boy, but he's like 50-something years old. He's almost like the Satan baby from Passion of the Christ, where he's a baby, but he's old. He kind of looks like if the Frankenstein was a twink, like Dr. Frankenstein, like built like he revived a dead body, but for the purpose of having sex with it. So he picked like the twinkiest twink he could, and then he slapped a layer of translucent skin on him, and then had sex with him. You want to hear some more of Rob Sheffield's opinions?
Do it. It's a way that anybody can participate in music, even those of us with no talent whatsoever. The song I like to begin the night with is Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler, a song written by the great Jim Steinman. Total belter. This is a song that brings out the leather-lunged balladeer in anybody.
The leather-lunged balladeer.
It's got the part that has about 600 words per verse, and then it's got the parts that's just turn around. So it's got an easy part and a hard part, depending on your confidence level at the moment. And maybe depending on how many cocktails you've consumed at this stage of the
cocktails?
evening.
I don't consume cocktails, you fucking douchebag.
It's a great song in any context. This was a song...
He's overcompensating with that Merle Haggard part. Yeah, by the way, you don't have to fucking, when you do karaoke, you don't have to be ironic. You could just be sincere. What's with these fucking dorks? That's the closest thing guys like this can come to fucking humor, is to ironically like something. He's a hack. He wrote a book on the Beatles because there's not enough information about the Beatles. Oh, what? We have uncovered new photographs that John Lennon took of his fucking shit in 1972. Holy shit. Hey, we've uncovered more evidence that Paul isn't dead. Here's another thing. Taylor Swift, he wrote another article called 153 of Taylor Swift's songs ranked, because that was necessary. This is what he wrote about Taylor Swift. Sister Tay, he called her Sister Tay. Sister Tay may be the last true rock star on the planet, making brilliant moves or catastrophic gaffes, as rock stars tend to do. 139 on SNL's list. Let's see who beat him. Colin Quinn, who I believe, who is a great comic, although I think he spends a lot of his time, he spends most of his time these days over in Iraq still looking for those weapons of mass destruction he promised us. Colin Quinn is not as funny as Norm Macdonald. He got that part right. But who did he list directly above Norm Macdonald? Who does he say is better than Norm Macdonald? Randy Quaid. This is the fucking problem. Oh, and who is the greatest SNL cast member of all time? You guessed it. What would be the hackiest pick you can pick? Will Ferrell? No. Eddie Murphy? No. What would be the hackiest pick you could pick? Kristen Wiig? No. Dana Carvey? No. Dana Carvey's probably the actual answer. John fucking Belushi. Why? Because John Belushi was the most famous. I can't even fucking fathom. This is a guy who every week, who reinvented how Weekend Update was done by having one writer and one host work together to create one singular voice throughout the entire update. Not only a singular voice in SNL history or in the SNL culture, but a singular voice in comedy. There is no comic like Norm Macdonald. There is no one who writes and performs in that specific way. And there are very few comics who've invented a type of joke. It's fucking amazing that this moron gets this much fucking ink. It's fucking amazing that I'm even allowed, that I should even fucking have to even comment on this corporatist. Jay Moore ranked higher on that list. Anthony Michael Hall ranked higher on that list. Sarah Silverman, who's a great comic, but who was horrible on that show, ranked higher on that fucking corporatists, on this corporate fucking hacks list. There's a guy named Albert Murray who said the first function of criticism is to mediate between a work of art and the uninitiated reader, viewer, or listener. The mediator decodes and explains the elements of the game of stylization and makes the aesthetic statement more accessible, like I just fucking did. How come you can't explain Norm Macdonald's contribution? Why is your criticism of him stare into the camera a little longer, Norm? Maybe it'll get funnier. Why is your criticism he's Dennis Miller without the jokes? Name a Dennis Miller joke. Thank you. Done and done. You fucking weirdo.